Upset has left the Fnatic roster, which obviously he wasn't playing for in LEC Winter, and he has joined Vitality, which I think is not just a game changer for the league. Like most people think, right, this makes Vitality the true contender they were supposed to be from the round robin in the beginning of the group stage. I think it just straight up makes them the champion of the split. I'm just going to say that outright. So first and foremost, whenever I do roster move ones, I like to do this format where you ask, should actually the player removed have been removed? Did they like underperform, etc.? Were they the right person to remove? Then you look, have they added the right person? What does this do with the team? So should they have removed Neon from Vitality? Quite frankly, it seems like it. Even though I was one of the people who argued for him to get a space on a team like this, I thought it was worth a shot. I thought the angle of bringing in Carter, his Misfits coach, meant seemingly they'll know how to use him. He did look very good in the last split. He even was a solid player when he was in past teams like Schalke, etc. So I think, quite frankly, this guy, it was worth taking a shot, but it didn't work. And it definitely didn't work at the contender level where you wanted them to be. It wasn't even as good as when he was in Misfits and they were just a playoff team, quite frankly. So I think if you look at it, bot lane was clearly the worst performing lane. I mean, mid lane was pretty good most of the split, and top lane was exceptional. That was actually the best lane in the entire league in terms of like no top laner I thought consistently played as well as Photon. So you look, bot lane was clearly their issue. And then you consider, he looked like he had synergy issues with Kaiser. When Kaiser went to go in, he didn't. It seemed like there was a massive problem in terms of like understanding of what they were going to do and how they were going to play off each other, and seemingly comms between them. It actually makes me wonder, by the way, if Kaiser, having played with Kazi and then with Rookie Unforgiven, means he's just not used to the style of play that Neon wanted, or he didn't have the same vision for bot lane and what the ADC is supposed to do that Neon did. That's what I can speculate. And yeah, and quite frankly, it's actually a knock against Neon that he had his old coach and it worked so poorly. It almost couldn't have gone worse, right? The joke is, if he didn't have his old coach, wouldn't that be something people would say? Maybe the coaching staff of Misfits was what was helping Neon. Well, he has the coaching staff, essentially. And then, let's be real, even though his team, especially coming into the group stage, was one of the absolute best in the league, didn't almost every ADC in the league outperform Neon? I mean, the joke is it's only about Reckless didn't, right? Like, you look, even people like Kobe, who a lot of people don't have very high in terms of stock coming into that split, mega outperformed. They forget people like Crowley. They just left him in the dust, right? And then you have to add in a topic that me and Dom talked about quite a lot on Best Damn League Show, because it looked like this was the case as the groups went on, the middle phase of the split, was it quite frankly looked like the rest of the team identified they were having massive issues in bot lane, from bot lane, and they were never getting ahead in bot lane. And so as a result, it looked like it dragged the top side of the map down in terms of the draft and literally on the map. Like, Balls looked like they had to service bot lane all the time and started picking weird, like, panic picks like Karthus instead. I think I'm just going to play stuff like this instead of the kind of aggressive gank champions you'd want someone like Born, so you could just smurf on the game and go to any lane he wants and get his solos ahead. Instead, it looked like the whole team started having no company, starting to accommodate this bot lane that was just bleeding out and dying every single game. And also, let's be real, thus far this year, it's been a very bot-centric meta in draft and in terms of what the most important champions to get into the game are. Your bot matchup is incredibly influential over how the game is played. Over in the LCK, it's all about the bot lane. And I think if you look at it, quite frankly, I have to suspect at this point in time, because Kaiser himself seems like a guy who has a bad split and then a good split, or an average split and then a good split. And if you look at it, his level actually seems to be based on how well his ADC does, as boring as that sounds. So when Mad Lions first came into LEC and we were playing online, Kazi was a monster. So everyone loved Kaiser and was looking at all the great plays he was making. Then the next year, when they were finally able to do those playoff runs and win the championship, everyone was praising all of those like weird pocket picks he had and how he was able to make it work in the bot lane. Because he did all the roams and Kazi was that weird ADC, it wasn't like some god ADC in lane, or quite frankly, even like the best mid-game ADC or whatever. It made him look like, wow, these roams are really smart. Maybe he plays in spite of Kazi's flaws. So you can see how he got hyped up and how he got built up. And then you go to Unforgiven. Unforgiven was a rookie. Now it seems like his level went down a little bit in the spring. Then he got used to him maybe a bit more. They had a great summer split together. It seems, quite frankly, if you look at it, like it's a mixture of, I'd imagine he was more the follower as opposed to the leader at some point in time in these teams. And then also, if his ADC just doesn't play in really top level League of Legends, he's not a guy who's just going to be a monster on his own, it seems like. So let's add in that this guy is now getting another German player to play with him. So that actually, quite frankly, if you're picking between Kaiser and Neon, another reason aside from the knock of the Coach Carter angle against Neon, another reason in favour of Kaiser is Kaiser's also German. you'd hope there's a cultural background, a language background, a comms background. Basically, you'd hope those two, Upset and Kaiser, can just get in a room and talk it out, right? In a way that, for whatever reason, didn't seem to have worked for Neon and Kaiser themselves. And I have to say, after looking at Neon's career thus far, I do actually have the worry. I know Dom's made this point before, but I think he's on point. I get the worry that he might be one of those like small team players. Like, you put him in a bad team and give him everything, give him all the resources, his picks, and let him do what he wants to do. He can maybe carry a bad team, but if you put him onto the best teams, does it work? Thus far, doesn't seem to be the case, and that's something I'm certainly looking for going on further in his career, quite frankly. Now, in terms of getting Upset, look, this one doesn't need like a massive amount of explanation of why you'd got Upset. It's a slam dunk. Like, he's the best Western ADC player right now, and over the last like year, 2 years, quite frankly. In fact, if you just look last 2, 3, 4 years, aggregate, he's the best Western ADC. He's just been really, really, really good. Like, people always forget summer 2021, that one with the Whippo roll swap and the Adam thing, and then Niski. No, what you forget is that bot lane was carrying and was far and away the best bot lane. And hence, as a result, Upset went to the final of LEC and then went to Worlds in a year where Reckless had Mickey X and a super team. I think the way everyone just forgets about that when they contrasted Reckless and Upset. And then last year, he got them to Worlds again. And this one, they had no business getting to Worlds. 2021, they could have lost and gone 6th place in the playoffs and not made Worlds. This time around, he just carried them through playoffs into Worlds. Like, that team looked very, very broken. I thought that was an epic performance by Upset last split because of how whack his team was. I mean, let's be real, that team was so fucked, and he just carried them game after game after game, through bot lane, through picks, just through himself, even through just refusing the group on certain parts of the map. Just like, fuck it, I'm not just going to go there and die at Herald for no reason. Let's play through me, let me get ahead, then we'll be able to move. I think, quite frankly, one of the best things about Upset, beyond his incredible skill at the game and all that, is his mentality. His mentality is different. He is built different, I'm telling you. This is a guy who is driven. He has that work ethic. People will forget this as well. You're going to think he's just a prototypical ADC. No! In Season 9, he was a guy trying to work mages into his pool, by the way, when everyone said you had to do it. And obviously from Season 8 with the funnel, people had hinted that maybe the game will go in this direction and wow, Perkz could play the mages. He was another guy trying to do it. When was this guy's champion pool ever bad for Upset? It never was. He not only had the meta champions, he nearly always has a few pocket picks as well. Remember when Aphelios and Senna came out in Season 10 and people like Doublelift and Forgiven struggled? Right, in the first split with Origin, do people forget this? Origin finished 3rd in the regular split, ahead of Mad Lions, by the way. Like that brand new team that came in and blew up the league that year. And one of the reasons why is Upset was mega. Then in the summer, the one where they finished last place, he was a beast. There's a reason why people still thought he might be the best ADC. This was the era of Aphelios and Senna being introduced. And you go slow, look at the champions he was playing and where they get in the wins. And he was good on these champions. He put in the hours. And quite frankly, while everyone else was just bitching about Aphelios, he seems like he actually learned the champion and learned like, hey, this could actually be something where it has so much sort of viability of what it can do compared to fairly on the rails normal ADC champions. If I had to work on this could be a game changer for me. And I think it was, and it's one of the reasons he leveled his game up. And also, he doesn't just have the drive, and he has an aspiration to be great, and that is no small feat when you're talking about pro gamers in the West who tend to be lazy, slacker nerds who don't want to put in a lot of hard work, want to play, have it be fun, want to fuck around, not do the Western like grind approach, and then hope they get the results. And if you don't, well, we were close. 3-2 against SKT. Well, you know, I won that PO1 against something. Who gives a shit? This is a guy actually trying to be the best player at his position, the best in his region, the best in the world in theory. He's not even just a guy who's trying to win. If you go listen to my Reflections interviews with him, he has a hard time because he knows people are going to meme on him. But he's not a guy who's even like, you know, winning LECs the end goal. It isn't. He's the guy who wants to leave like a whole load of LEC championships and dominate LEC and then go international and make deep finishes and big teams. It's just he knows if you say it before you've done it, people who are very insecure are going to shit on you and be like, you'll never do it. Oh, who do you think you are? Etc. I tell you who he thinks he is. Somebody could be one of the greatest ever, and I believe him. So I think if you look at his career, it's so rare that people want to be great and win. A lot of people want to win. Some people want to be great and don't care otherwise. This guy wants it all. If you're a fan, by the way, and you want to see Western players succeed, I don't know what more you want out of this guy, except maybe be just less German, a little bit more funny or something like that. That's about it. And even then, he's got a pretty decent sense of humour, and he can sort of take a bit of ribbon and banter for someone who's German in that regard. Like, he's not one of those ones who's just like some stone face, oh, don't get any of the... No, it's just maybe not as naturally charismatic and funny as some of the American players. Well, I mean, we're talking about a select group there, but the best of them at least, let's just say. And quite frankly, Anywhere except Asia, I don't think you get players like this. It's so rare. And quite frankly, it's just because they generate more top people trying to be pros in Asia. So they just have such an intense system and they have so many more people to throw at the problem. They're just going to end up with more of those people who are willing to do anything that takes to make the grade. Like, he really is, in my opinion, the closest thing the West has ever seen to forgiving in that sense. Someone who had the raw mechanical ability and the drive to do it. Except the best thing is he doesn't have a lot of the fucked up elements of forgiving, like a totally terrible teammate and a guy who had only one vision of the game and someone who won't ever let himself be carried in a game if he needs to, or won't give up some draft priority or something. He will do all these things. He has none of the downsides of forgiving. That's the craziest part. I think he's a very special type of competitor. There's only a few people I put in that bucket where you have to understand, people like Expeke and Soaz had all the skills to be the best and they had a very interesting competitive mindset, but they weren't going to grind. They didn't have like crazy work ethic. They didn't really want to be like the best player in the whole world if it meant like giving up all these things and not fun. This guy's in the vein of forgiving. Diamond Prox, Froggen. There's a reason why I was always riding with these players, because I know if you give them the chance, not only are they really good and really consistent, you'll notice all the ones I'm picking, they actually believe it themselves if you talk to them. They believe they can be better or are better than that Korean player and he just has better teammates or drafted, whatever it is. They don't go into the game going, I'm worse and I'm not going to win. And I guess, they're not like Doublelift and Bjergsen, mate. These guys are cut from a different cloth. That's why I've always picked these players over those ones, except when those players were outperforming. I'm talking about in the context of how far can they go in the world. I think the flaw of Upset's game is insane. Think about it. Forget, do I think he was the best? When was he ever bad? If you ranked him in every split he played, mate, he's elite in pretty much every single split. Like, you could maybe say his first ever split in Schalke at the beginning was bad. Okay, all right. Is that the end of the world? And spoiler, they had to change that roster to make the run in the summer. So I think, quite frankly, once you pass that split, the flaw is mega. The consistency is mega. And then when you actually give him teammates, suddenly you're seeing monster performances from him. And then even on the average lineups with players where there's not even that much threat on the rest of the team, he's still a consistent win condition that you can get wins through and you can make 2 semi-finals of LEC, etc. Even when the rest of the team and the budget doesn't at all justify that. And quite frankly, I'll just say this. If he's someone who was a negative influence on teams and very selfish and very limited and can only play one way and then where are all his ex-coaches saying this stuff or hinting at it? Because I'll say this guy to me, especially when talking to his coaches, I have the perception he's the coach's dream. He's a guy who just takes care of all his stuff, is driven, doing his work, doing his homework, watching other regions, trying to be the best. A guy like that, you talk about how he interacts with his teammates and what was he doing here, but generally they're taking care of themselves. That's one less problem for you as the coach. Now you can work on that top player or that jungler who's got a weird mentality or doesn't get something about the game or isn't putting in the hours on the newest champion. You're going to have to try and win him over or negotiate that he's going to play it in the draft or something. You don't have to worry about someone like an Upset. And quite frankly, one of the biggest factors in this move hyping me is that he's being paired with Perkz. Someone I also think is just fucking amazing. Because with Perkz at this point in his career, like he did on Cloud9, look, he did show you last year, and at times in the round robin, he can still be a really strong, just raw mid laner, raw laner, just mid lane player in general, and star player, carry all. He did show you he could be an MVP candidate. But at this point in his career, the best quality of Perkz is what other people lack. That he is super clutch, that he is a closer, that he'll make the decisive move late in a game, or he'll call for something in the middle of a game that can win you the game, that can turn it, that can put it into your favour. You pair someone like that with a super elite level driven player from like ADC, like Upset, that sounds amazing. That sounds like that combo is going to work so well. Like, if this team can actually do well when they're in late games, they sound like they could be one of the best. And then add this in, Perkz and Upset. Well, there's 2 problems we don't have in practice. I think this will fix any problems in practice. You might have heard it alluded to. One of the reasons Upset didn't want to play in Fnatic this year and didn't want to play with certain other players, and quite frankly why some of them didn't want to play with him, is because he didn't want to just mess around and have a chill time in the off season and then just get going like, we'll just start late and peak as we go. Like, no, he wanted to do hardcore grinding, let's put in a big boot camp. If we're going to do it, let's go for broke. And other people didn't want it, quite frankly. I think in this team he's going to have the people who are going to vibe with that mentality. He's only toxic in a similar sense to Perkz, in the sense that he won't just put up with bullshit. He's not just going to watch the team just go down the drain and go, oh well, I'm doing all right. But the difference is Perkz has the charisma and especially the authority of all those championships, and the fact that we've all seen him winning MSI and in those finals at Worlds and semis, etc. Difference is he has the authority to pull off this attitude of keeping people in line in a way that now Upset won't even have to. That's the best part. Upset can just chill and play ADC and worry about what his support's doing or what the jungle's doing. He's got someone to be the captain of the team now. Now he can just be the star of the team. And then let's be real. If you're looking at those two players, if you were going to build star player like a 1-2 punch from the 2 of the 3 lanes, having an explosive, really clutch mid laner, and a guy who thinks he can also go head-to-head with the best mids. And then from ADC, having a really consistent, amazing damage output, almost unbreakable mindset ADC. That's like probably the most classic pairing, probably the best pairing if you want to win championships, right? I had to learn this from some of the super teams of old, where individually the players were really good, but the balance and the style didn't work out much like the XL team. This split didn't. Like if you think of the old Elements team, where they were the champions as Alliance, then they brought in Reckless from the second best team, Fnatic, and he was the MVP of the summer, bullshit. And he paired with the MVP of the spring, Froggen, great call. And you thought, right, the 2 MVPs of the league, best mid, best ADC. Let's go to work, right? This is, quite frankly, you could already argue Friggen was better than Reckless at the time. Let's go to work. They should win all championships. Well, they were whack, weren't they? Well, one of the reasons why it makes sense is they're very similar players. They're both just that consistent player who doesn't want to take massive risks. So where's the guy making the initiative? Where's the guy going for broke? And then you've got 2 insurance policies, but in this scenario, you're never getting yourself into the situation you needed the insurance policy for. So quite frankly, I think if you look back on Elements, the problem they had was obviously Wicked was replaced in this lineup and wasn't a dominant star anymore. The reason CLG EU used to work is because Wicked was the super high variance, but very skilled and very aggressive and explosive top laner. And then you had the consistent insurance policy of Froggen to carry you through the game, get you to late game team fights, do the consistent damage and win you the game. That pairing was money. Reckless and Froggen was actually quite a bad setup for everyone, and everyone looked worse. Then you consider, when was Reckless maybe at his best as a player? I actually think, forget 2020 Worlds, that's one tournament. I think it was actually over Season 8 was Reckless's best time ever, even though that's going to sound silly because for part of summer, obviously he benched himself for that whole funnel thing. But if you look at like Spring Split and then you look at Worlds, guys, I actually think the reason why they were so good is because Reckless was a really, really good insurance policy for Caps. Caps had that crazy 1v1, super aggressive, super abusive, like hold your flash, do ridiculous pushes where the jungler can just be there and get you for free, all sorts of stuff. But he had that super consistent high-level Reckless style, and therefore it offset each other. You had the balls of Caps, but then you had the reliability of Reckless. It's why, by the way, I'm super hyped about the Jingdong team this year, because I think Knight and Ruler is a way more tantalizing prospect than one Chovy and Ruler. Chovy's way more in the Froggen camp, and especially more so than Knight and Jakilov, because again, Knight and Jakilov are too much of the same sort of a player. They were always sauce, especially when they had 369 as well. We can't have 3 players like that across the 3 lanes. We've got to have something reliable. It's also why, by the way, in my opinion, if you go and look, actually, Scout and Viper were probably better, if you look like overall, yes, than Knight and Jakilov. Because with Viper, you have that aggro, super powerful ADC, but then with Scout, you have the super reliable mage player who's just going to play out his game really, really consistent. So I think this is the pairing that people have got to look for, more so than how good are the players. Like, I think you actually want, I've always said, great teammates in team games, as far as I can tell. Your strength covers his flaw, so it makes you look like neither of you have a strength and a flaw. Only your strengths get combined, you look like you're unbeatable, but then you take the pieces apart and you see the flaws again. By the way, if you want free DJT to play on Esports Bet with, just log into the account each day on the website and you will get given, it'll show on the screen, 600 DJT. It's a free cryptocurrency they have, and you can use it to enter competitions like the World's Prediction Series contest. They've got one for spring now, where you can potentially win hundreds of thousands of USDT if you do well with your predictions. I also think signing Upset will fix Kaiser. I've alluded to it earlier, but think about Upset's career. Consider how he played last split when Hylissang was inting all the time. There's a reason Hylissang isn't in Fnatic anymore, boys. And then consider Upset was playing one of his best splits when he did that and looked awesome in the playoffs. Then ask yourself, when Hylissang was good, no, not good, great. He was an MVP candidate in spring, and he was really good in the summer before, the year before, right? Then Upset was just far and away the best, and the best bot lane, and it looked really, really good. So I think, quite frankly, what makes Upset different from some of the ADCs is he's the one who doesn't just have the skill and the drive and the pool. He knows how to play. He knows what he wants and what he needs, and he can lead via in his lane and then from his lane on the map, in my opinion. I would contrast him with what Kobe talked about when he was in TSM, and maybe he didn't get how Splice and Peter Don and Duke, etc., had set up the team around him to allow him to be this carry in the way he was. When he went to TSM and he had all these other players and these solos that thought they were the aggressive carries, and the others, suddenly Kobe was just lost. That ain't Upset. Like, quite frankly, it's even an upside, I've always thought, of Doublelift's game, that he will demand resources. He will tell you how he wants to play. He will try and make a shot call. Now, look, I agree with Dom. I think he's one of the most overrated shot callers ever, and he called some very boneheaded players that have just lost his team games, including at Worlds, in my opinion. But I'll give him this. At least when he's fed, he's telling people what he wants, what he thinks he needs. That's going to give you a chance. If you're just guessing when you're the jungler or the top lane or something, who knows? Who knows how we're going to play on this guy? We'll just see where we get in the fight, right? So I think, yeah. I think you also look in Kaiser's career, if we come to a meta where he can roam, where he's on the engaged ship, it's just automatically going to be better, isn't he? And we all know that Upset can play with players who use those champions. So quite frankly, I think he's going to find a way to make it work with Kaiser. Now, look, some of that's on Kaiser, but I think you'll find a way. And as I said, I think Kaiser's just a guy who has one split that's not that good, or one split that's good. One split that's not that good, or one split that's good. I think he's due for one right now. And then, as I said earlier, they are both speaking German. Not only culturally is that, I would say, a more distinct background than certain other European countries, but in terms of the language, I think it's going to be perfect that they can just speak entirely in their own language. They don't have to translate anything to English if they want to just have a com about bottling, not in the game, like privately though. They can just go into as much detail as they want, and there's going to be no roadblocks in theory. For Vitality, the team, I think this is so great. As I said, I think they're going to win the split. Like, the Photon gamble was the biggest gamble last split. Actually, it wasn't getting Neon, it wasn't keeping Kaiser, it wasn't like bringing on Coach. It was easily getting Photon. No one knew this guy if he'd be any good. He is the best top laner in the league last split. And I say that even though he didn't play in the playoffs and Broken Blade won the split. I don't care. My eye test tells me Photon was the best top laner. And I think it was by a decent amount. I think Bo was an MVP candidate, but team conditions spoiled it. He didn't make the playoffs. And the way that the bot lane started playing, you couldn't have won the game anyway if you'd have just ignored them. You almost had to go and just waste the game dying and spoil off the drafts to help these guys survive. I think now what you'll see is Bo fully unleashed, and it's why I have the prediction that if Vitality wins this split, Bo will be the MVP, because I think he'll just look so spectacular and dominant from jungle that even though maybe the lanes all do great, the team's excellent, I think he will just look like so far ahead of any other jungler that he will be the MVP of the league. Perkz, remember, was very good in the round robin. He's still a strong enough player in the groups. He just had some dodgy lanes. Obviously, the team started to collapse and started to get figured out. I think if you look at this team now, one of the most exciting things is you can play through all three lanes. All three. The only other team you could say that about was G2, and even then no one knows what Broken Blade internationally, right? If you look, right, Photon is a stud. You can play through him. We know you can play through Perkz historically, and even in this team. And if you have the Upset, I can tell you right now, every team can play through Upset when Upset's on the team. That's all three. That's so dangerous in my opinion. And if you're Bo, that's why you're going to be the MVP, bro. You can gank any of these lanes. You don't have to just gank bot all the time. And by the way, now when you gank bot, they're going to be ahead. They're going to be winning. It's going to fix the game rather than just help them maybe survive or stem the bleeding. Then you've got Perkz. Even if jungle's giving bot attention, like, Perkz can roam to top. He can get busy with Photon. Now the top side of the map is freed up in general again because the bot can probably hold. So I think now you're going to see a very dangerous map if you're playing against Vitality, way less streamlined. And then let's be real, if you even looked at the previous splits in their careers, like, Photon was really good early. Upset's an excellent mid-game ADC and great when you get into a team fight fed. And then Perkz, like I say, always has those game-winning potential players late in games. I think they've got this game covered, boys. I think they've got such a great mix of players and strengths in different areas. I think, quite frankly, this team is so stacked now. I'm just going to say it. I think there's a world where you'll be able to make the case at the end of the split that Photon, Bo, Perkz, and Upset. I don't know about the Photon one, but I'm going to throw him in there out credit for what he did last split. Those four players potentially could be the MVP candidates. You could just be picking between them which the MVP is, never mind someone on another team. I think the potential of this lineup is very underrated because the last lineup didn't end up looking as good at the end, and that stuck in people's minds from recency bias. Yeah, I'm not so sure about the coach. He hasn't done anything in playoffs yet in his career, but he's got some fabulous pieces to work with. And quite frankly, when you have a team with players like Perkz and Upset, especially combined, I don't think you have to coach as much, especially not man management. And quite frankly, Bo seems super self-driven and extremely, I would say, self-confident for a very young player and a player who's had a checkered past. I want to see this team at MSI as one of the two teams in that double elim playoff bracket, because I can see a world where they can upset. In the BO1s, definitely, a team like Jingdong or maybe even D+ if they play against them, especially because of that ball factor. And who knows, in a playoff series, I think it could be really spicy against one of these teams. I think this has the potential, I'm just going to say it right now, to be one of the best lineups in Western League of Legends history. The only question for me is if it gets anywhere close to that, what do we actually do if Alfari decides he wants to come back? What if Photon's still really good and now Alfari wants back in? Like, do they really not let him in? Do they put him on another team? Do you bring him back? That's the real sort of Sophie's choice dilemma. But then again, you cross that bridge if you come to it, right? The rest of the lineup looks fire.
Hey, it's the last passive LEC Upset, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
The Beatles said they get by with a little help from their friends, but I get by with a little help from my Patreon community. And this video was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Bot Pounder 420, Thooorin, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Tosh, and a special thanks always goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers to find out who are the upcoming guests? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy but intense esports discussions I have with my donators. Or maybe you want to suggest a guest or a topic that I could cover. Well, if any of those tickle your fancy, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below there is a Patreon link.